Taoiseach, the Taoiseach is meeting the British Prime Minister today, and I understand that they will discuss trade, energy supply and the North. And in the wake of remarks last week by the British Secretary of State Theresa Villiers, I hope that the Taoiseach will remind the British Prime Minister of the government in London's outstanding obligations to the peace process. Among other issues, the British government has failed to implement key parts of the Good Friday Agreement, including Act na Gaeilge, the Civic Forum, the Bill of Rights and other issues of equality and human rights. They've also refused to establish an inquiry into the murder of human rights lawyer Pat Finucane, the Ballymurphy massacre, or to hand over files in relation to the Dublin Monaghan bombing, despite a call to do so by the Oireachtas. And I suppose more significantly and up to date, we're now entering the third month since Dr. Richard Haass and Professor Megan O'Sullivan presented proposals which followed lengthy discussion with political parties and others. And you know that the UUP has rejected these proposals. The DUP have yet to support them, but that they're largely supported by Sinn Féin, by the SDLP and by the Alliance Party. So, Taoiseach, I think that recent history teaches us that the Unionist parties will only positively move and address issues if encouraged by both governments to do so. Running away from the Richard Haass proposals won't achieve anything, but in fact will encourage those who are against progress. So, Taoiseach, will the Taoiseach make it clear to the British Prime Minister that negative engagement by London and rowing back on commitments by it is deeply unhelpful?
Thank you.
Well, as Deputy Adams has said, the Taoiseach is meeting with the British Prime Minister today. This is now part of a regular annual meeting, summit meeting between the Taoiseach of this country and the Prime Minister of Britain to discuss issues around our bilateral relationship. And clearly the issues of trade, of tourism, of investment, of our bilateral relations, and of course the issue of Northern Ireland will form part of those discussions. There are immediate issues that do have to be addressed. I'm disappointed, as I'm sure Deputy Adams is, that insufficient progress has been made in the discussions following the work that was done by Dr. Haass and Dr. O'Sullivan just prior to the new year. I was reasonably satisfied that progress was being made in the discussions among the party leaders in Northern Ireland. That has, to some extent, been derailed recently, arising from the Downey judgment and the fallout of that, the controversy arising from it. But I would hope that following the St. Patrick's Day period, that it will be possible to get those discussions back on track and to make progress again, because the three critical issues which arise in that area: how to deal with the issue of flags and identity, how to deal with the controversies surrounding parading, and how, of course, to deal with the very controversial area of the past. These are issues that do have to be grappled with. I've discussed these issues on a number of occasions since the new year with the Secretary of State. I've discussed them as recently as yesterday with her. I plan to meet her again following the St. Patrick's Day events, and I would hope that it will be possible shortly after the St. Patrick's Day period to have the regular Quad meeting that the Secretary of State and I have with the First Minister and Deputy First Minister. We're overdue such a meeting, and I think that that meeting and that format, I think, would be a useful forum in which to try and get things back on track. As Deputy Adams says, there are issues which are still unimplemented. There is still unfinished business from the agreements, and the Irish Government continues to pursue those with the British Government.
Thank you. Deputy Adams.
Taoiseach, well, you will know, and we've talked about this privately, but you will know that the concern is that the Unionist parties, particularly the Democratic Unionist Party, have put back the issues and the proposals put by Richard Haass and Megan O'Sullivan until after the local government elections, which brings us into June. And then, of course, June means the marching season and so on. So I think there needs to be a very particular focus. And it isn't even that the British government has been disengaged. I would be the last person to complain about British government disengagement from Ireland. The fact is that its engagement has been negative. It has not been therapeutic, it has not been positive, and it has been in breach, as I have already enunciated and you have acknowledged, of agreements made in international treaties and in other agreements between this government and the London government and between people across the island. And I mean, one of those issues is the issue, you mentioned the John Downey judgment, is the issue of on the runs, and it's one of several, this issue of OTRs, legacy issues that is common to all conflict resolution processes. It isn't just an Irish issue. It's wherever there are efforts made to move from conflict into peace, that's one of the matters that has to be dealt with. And the two governments agreed at Weston Park some long time ago that issue would be resolved. And it's a very, very graphic example of an issue not being resolved despite entreaties and representations by Sinn Féin over the years. And then we can see how it comes up and is used, or it has a negative effect on the process, and then there's a stall in what needs to be done. So Taoiseach, as our Government Escaltanista, would you agree that there has to be a very, very basic principle in terms of peacekeeping, and that is when agreements are made, when commitments are given, that they have to be kept, and that has to be one of the primary ongoing tenacious forensic focus of this government with your counterparts in London, that they have to keep agreements that they made?
Thank you. Tánaiste.
Yes, I do agree that when agreements are made, they have to be kept. I also think it is important that the two governments continue to work hand in hand and jointly in relation to the Northern Ireland peace process. I have a good working relationship with the Secretary of State. We talk regularly. We talk in the institutional format that I've described. There is a very good working relationship at official level. And I believe it is very important that the two governments, who are the joint guarantors of the agreements, should work together, and I hope that will continue to be the case. In relation to the issue of the OTRs to which you referred, which has obviously come into public discussion arising from the Downey case, there was an understanding at Weston Park that this would be a follow-on issue from the arrangements that were made as part of the Good Friday Agreement. To be fair, there was an attempt to legislate for it. And you're aware of the legislation that former Secretary of State Peter Hain brought forward. I think it was 2005, 2006. Agreement wasn't. There wasn't agreement on that legislation, as you know, arising from which administrative arrangements were put in place to deal with the issue. I'm encouraged by what Prime Minister Cameron said when he was questioned about this, and that is that he does not wish to unpick difficult decisions that were made by the previous British government as part of the peace process. And I think that is important, that there isn't any unpicking of difficult decisions that were made and arrangements that were put in place. But what we do need to do is we do need to build and to move on. And I think that the issue that we need to address post St. Patrick's Day, the St. Patrick's Day period, is the continuation of the Haas-O'Sullivan talks. It is not satisfactory to the Irish government that this is an issue that is parked until after the elections in May, because, as you say, if we do that, we will be into the marching season. One of the critical issues which is part of that discussion is how to deal with the contentious issue of parades. And, of course, there is the continuing issue, which continues to emerge from on a very regular basis about issues from the past and the hurt and so on that's associated with that for families and survivors that has to be addressed. So, as far as the Irish government is concerned, our approach will be, and as I said, I discussed this with the Secretary of State as recently as yesterday, our approach will be to try and get things back on track as quickly as possible after the St. Patrick's Day period.
Thank you.